Okay, good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Alana Weiss from the Google EDU team, and today it is my pleasure to welcome Stan Slapp to the Leading at Google series. For Stan Slapp, emotional commitment from managers is the holy grail for explosive results. Today, he'll speak to his first book titled Bury My Heart at Conference Room B, The Unbeatable Impact of Truly Committed Managers, which was on the top 5 on the bestseller lists of the New York Times, USA Today, and the Wall Street Journal. It was also named one of the best books of the year by Inc. magazine and Fast Company. Stan Slapp is the president of the international consulting company called, by a remarkable coincidence, Slapp. And following a history of accomplishments as a CEO and advisor, Stan is now focused on influencing managers at today's fastest growing companies through his work as a corporate strategist and trainer. Stan Slapp is intent on making a profound difference in the world before he is forcibly removed from it. And because that is a mission that Googlers can definitely identify with, please join me in welcoming Stan Slapp.
All right, how you doing? Good, good. All right, listen, before we even get started here, I know that you're here for any number of reasons, but one of the reasons must be to learn. And there are 2 ways to learn anything. I mean, you know this. There's data and there's experience. And there's 2 types of experience. There's good experience, there's bad experience. And even though we all like to claim we're nibbling from the higher branches by this point in our evolution, let's face it, it's most often the bad experience that finally claims our attention. Which is why before we even get started today, I would like to dedicate our time together to the one company which in recent memory has committed the most boneheaded act. An act that is not just so anti-business sense, it's so anti-common sense that it can only be interpreted as a noble act, as a selfless gesture, so the rest of us may learn what not to do and so grow and prosper in our own organizations. Now, competition for the dedication spot in this talk has been predictably fierce. But my company does business in over 70 countries, so I thought I'd look globally for the dedication spot, and I think I've found the company that is worthy of that honor. So I would like to dedicate our time together today to Aeroflot, the Russian airline. Has anybody here ever flown Aeroflot? Great. Has anybody here ever flown United? Yeah, you've flown Aeroflot, pretty much the same thing. And by the way, everything I tell you here today is true. Aeroflot management, in a desperate bid to cure sagging revenue, has leaped upon a new consumer campaign, which they announced recently in the business press in Eastern Europe. And according to Aeroflot, in this article where they announced it, this campaign is their first ever what they call Smile Day. And according to Aeroflot management, on Smile Day, every employee of the airline will be under orders to, quote, smile unceasingly at customers for the entire day. It's like, and they were asked in the same article, well, what if Smile Day is a success? And their official corporate spokesperson responded, if Smile Day is a success, we will consider implementing it on an annual basis, right? And I thought, it is exactly this treatment of effect over cause, of symptom over sickness, that's responsible for the chronic ills that business faces today. Because it's not just Google. The problems that continue to baffle and bedevil managers in every company, in every industry, in every line of business, on every team, in every country, are not really new problems. The biggest problem is that the solutions are not really new solutions. Now, nowhere is that more the case than when it comes to a subject like leadership, which is what I'm going to talk to you about today. Now, leadership, that's a big subject. We could spend a lifetime talking about leadership. I don't have a lifetime to spend talking to you about leadership. I have about 40 minutes. So I figured I had a choice. I can make the 40 minutes seem like a lifetime to you. Or I could focus on what's most important. Today, I am going to focus on what's most important. Now, I've got, I guess, good news and bad news about this. The good news is I happen to know a lot about leadership. My company's leadership solution, which is called Bury My Heart at Conference Room B, is the highest rated management development process in many of the world's highest rated companies. That took about 10 years to build, and we beta tested for another 10 years amongst tens of thousands of managers around the world. The book version, this thing, this took a while to write too, and I wrote it back by a 23-person research team, including Pulitzer-winning investigative journalists and specialists in psychoneurobiology. So, bottom line is I happen to know a lot about this particular subject. I can actually show you exactly how to be a leader. The bad news is I've got like 40 minutes to do that. This is like a 40-minute workshop on the principles of neurosurgery. So grab those knives and good luck. I can't possibly explain to you exactly how to become a leader in 40 minutes. But here's what I can do. There is more mythology, misdirection, superstition, and generalized academic babble about leadership than almost any business subject. I can bust the most dangerous myths once and for all for you, right here, right now. I can give you a little taste of what leadership would look like in your own organization if you applied it. I can tell you once and for all the difference between management and leadership, if you ever really wondered about that. And if I can't show you exactly how to become a leader, I can do the one thing far more important than that. I can show you exactly why you should become a leader. Because that is one of the biggest myths of leadership, is that it's a practice. Leadership is not a practice, not something else you have to do as a manager. Leadership is a purpose, it's a motivation. There isn't a leadership school in history that can claim history's greatest leaders as alumni. They all just started somewhere and figured it out. I can show you what has caused every iconic leader in history to pull that trigger on the ignition switch that kick-started their leadership, and I can make it immaculately relevant for you at Google. And I'm talking to you as managers, so let me just real quick find this. How many of you in this room are actually managers with head count? Raise your delicate, well-manicured fingers, please. Okay, then how many of you would classify yourself more as the managed? Raise your tough, callous, working-class hands, please. Yeah, okay, so if you're the managed, I'm going to show you the greatest secret of managing successfully as well, which is found in this whole thing. And this is certainly relevant for the people who've chosen to be managers. Don't you start getting all snarly and cocky in here going, your career could take a sudden wrong turn. You could become a manager, and you're going to wish you'd listened to this information. In the meantime, you're still managing something at Google. You're managing conceptually yourself. You're managing part of Google's business. You're managing others. You're managing your life. So I think this will still be relevant to you. Okay? Now, let's get to the big myths of leadership. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to ask and answer some questions for you, and we'll bust these myths. Be happy to take questions at the end, but let me get through some of the big ones now for you. The first, probably the biggest, is leadership important? Well, let me answer this for you conclusively. No. We should just stop here, right? Thank you. See how much you learn at these things? No, leadership is not important. Leadership is absolutely meaningless. Now, what leadership provides, that's very important. You know, you can go on Amazon.com as an example. You can type in books, leadership. How many titles do you think are available right now under the subject heading of leadership? And I actually did this when I wrote Bury My Heart at Conference Room B, and they breed like rabbits, so I don't know how many are there now, but I have an actual number for you. How many titles do you think are available? Thousands. 50,000. Keep going. You know what? I'm going to skip the suspense because I know Googlers will try and crack this code for the next hour. 380,567 titles. Yep. 84% of those books written in the last 15 years, 91% about something called business leadership. Do you ever wonder where all this incessant babble in the enterprise about leadership comes from? It comes from the one thing that any company wants most from its managers: emotional commitment. A manager's emotional commitment is the ultimate trigger for their discretionary effort. It's worth more than your financial, intellectual, and physical commitment combined. A manager's emotional commitment, that's the stuff that solves problems that are unsolvable. It creates energy when all the energy has been expended. And it ignites emotional commitment in others, like employees and teams and customers. Any legendary, sustained organizational success is at the root, the result of a bunch of emotionally committed managers. And leaders are those rare human beings in history who have emotional commitment to a cause and who can inspire it at will in other people. Now, any manager in this room, joining any manager watching this on YouTube, joining any manager in the world, can appear fully productive and enthusiastic simply because you are intellectually, financially, and physically committed. But if you've ever witnessed a human being emotionally committed to a cause, working like they're being paid $1 million, they're not being paid a dime, you know there's a difference. You know it's big. It's that difference a company wants from its managers. But just because it's big doesn't mean it's easy. The key neurobiological source of emotional commitment in any human being, this is not me telling you this is your brain telling you this. The key neurobiological source of emotional commitment is your ability to live your own deepest personal values in whatever relationship or environment that you're involved in. Well, if you're a manager, that means your relationship with Google, your environment at work. Now, manager may be a great job to have. If you're a manager, you may be having a great time doing that job. But embedded in any manager's job description is the requirement to continually subordinate or even compromise personal values in favor of company priorities. Now, I'm not saying you're out there committing heinous acts as part of some Faustian bargain, although even if you are, listen up. What I am saying is what the company wants done and how it wants it done must regularly take precedence over your own deep priorities. That's what it means to be a manager. You serve your company first. Well, if you put a person in a position like that, they detach to protect themselves. Now, in a bad company, have any of you ever worked in a nasty, toxic belly of the beast company? Yeah, okay. In those kinds of companies, managers make the conscious choice to detach. Managers in those nasty companies, they say to themselves, I'm going to suit up every day for the detachment factory and leave the best of who I am at home and hope that it's basically still there when I get home to reclaim it. But in a good company, like this company, that tries to do the right thing for its managers, the detachment is even more dangerous because it can't be easily seen, because intellectual and financial and physical commitment combine to masquerade as the missing type. But emotional commitment is different. It's deeper. It comes from a different, deeper place. And if this isn't understood and the ability for managers to sustain this on their own isn't really embedded into the organization, then any hope of emotional commitment is lost, and lost with it is any hope of real leadership. So let's talk about real leadership again for a minute. If you go back to those 380,567 books on leadership, take a look at them, they'll all pretty much tell you the same thing. They will tell you that the purpose of leadership is to increase shareholder value and team productivity. That is not actually the purpose of leadership. That has never been the purpose of leadership. That will never be the purpose of leadership. The irreducible essence of leadership is that leaders are human beings who live their own deepest values without compromise. And they use those values to make life better for other people. Now, that's why people become leaders, and that's why people follow leaders. So the question is can the people in this room, whether you're a manager or not, become a real leader? Oh yeah, leadership is not some rare genetic imperative. It's innate in every human being, and it's damn well innate in you. You just have to know where to get started. Now, if you study the chronology of every iconic leader in history, their leadership all starts in pretty much the same place, with their personal values being put under tremendous pressure. You want to know something's important to you? Meet somebody trying to take it away. Well, that same pressure is on your values if you're a manager. It's just harder to realize because the pressure on a manager's personal values arrives gift-wrapped. It arrives with financial reinforcement. It arrives with a sense of self to be gained by affiliating with the might and magnificence of the company. Besides, there isn't any company that actually wants its managers to be leaders. Really, study leadership throughout human history. Leaders are people who use their own values and vision to overthrow the established order and set everybody free. What are you, nuts? This is the last thing any company wants its managers to be particularly interested in or capable of. The company just wants managers to do the things that leaders do, like model selfless acts of devotion and inspire a sullen group of individuals to make a bloody charge up the competitor's hill to capture the fourth quarter flag. And what the company really wants from its managers is emotional commitment. And there's nothing wrong with that. But listen up, that's not why you should be a leader. As a manager, your most important responsibility is to Google. As a leader, your most important responsibility is to yourself. You must fulfill your personal responsibility first. As far from being a subversive act, this is actually the single most supportive corporate action you could ever take. The bottom line about leadership is that you will never really work for your company until your company really works for you. And if you think that this is a problem that somehow has escaped Google, just because Google is a great company, which it unquestionably is, let me give you a little stat. The first time we put 10,000 managers through the Bury My Heart at Conference Room B process, the full process, we went back and looked at some data that came out of those sessions. And these are 10,000 managers from over 70 countries, from many of the world's most admired companies, from executive to entry level. And we asked those managers, well, if the source of emotional commitment is living your deepest personal values, what are your deepest personal values? What do you care most about as people? Now, that's not a test. There's no right or wrong answers to that question. But there were certainly some choices made more often than others. The number 1 and 2 values most often chosen by managers, and we do this every time we hit another 10,000, it's always the same. Here's the first 10,000. 10,000 managers. The number 1 and 2 values chosen by those managers as most important. Number 1 was family. Number 2 was integrity. Now we asked those same 10,000 managers across 70 countries, from executive to entry level, and from many of the world's most admired organizations. So what are the personal values you're most under pressure to compromise on a regular basis to do your job successfully? Watch me now, this goes very quickly. You better file that under big trouble. You are looking at the equation for emotional detachment. And since leadership is the organizing framework for emotional commitment, that's why we're talking about leadership. And that brings us to the next question. Do you have to be born a leader? No. Nobody is born a leader. You just have to do the things that leaders do for the reasons that leaders really do them. Now, the number 1 thing that separates a leader from a normal human being is that a leader really knows who they are as a human being. I mean, they really know who they are. A leader knows themselves so well, they could put a name on their core values. Now, most of us don't really know ourselves that well. We may be driven by our core values. We may be driven crazy by not meeting our core values. Doesn't mean we really know what those values are. Doesn't mean that we are making daily decisions to protect and to promote what's truly most important to us. Well, leaders are different. They know this about themselves. And because a leader knows exactly who they are, they know exactly where they want to go in the world. They want to go to a place where their values are fully realized. Martin Luther King Jr. is a young man. Discovers pretty early on he's got core values of what? Freedom, spirituality, equality. So he knows where he wants to go. He wants to go to a place where those values are fully in play. Calls it, I have a dream. The only problem is he can't make that dream happen all by himself. It's too big. He's got to turn his values into a compelling cause for other people. I can tell you, that's where and why leadership starts, right there. Leaders do apparently selfless things for the world, but at heart, they're very self-centered people. They're going to do it for you because they desperately need you to do something for them. I mean, if a leader knew who they were, and so they knew where they wanted to go, and they knew how to get there, they'd just go. They'd send you a postcard from the promised land. I have a dream. You're not in it, okay? But they need you. And so if you were a world leader, your leadership would be taking place on the world stage. You are a Google manager, then your leadership takes place in your organization. That's where the pool of your potential followers, the people that are going to make your values happen, are going to come from. And so what would it sound like to translate that concept? Well, I'll give you a little taste. This isn't the entire equation. Otherwise, it would have been a pamphlet instead of a book. But I'll give you a little taste of what it would sound like. Let's say, like many managers do, you have family as one of your deepest personal values. Now, if you were a leader, you'd have the kind of self-awareness to understand why. Why, out of a world of possibilities, you pick family as one of your core values. So you would actually know, beyond the literal definition of family, what family gives you as a concept that makes it so important to you. So let's say you thought about it and you said, what do I get from my family? I get open, honest communication. I get unconditional support. When I need it, I get tough love. But if I stumble and fall in my family, they'll be there to scoop me up and put me back on my hind legs. And in my family, I am surrounded by people who put my welfare ahead of their own. And they inspire me to do the same for them. There isn't a righteous feeling in the world that can touch that. And that's why family is so important to me. And I'm not going to do without that over half my waking hours at work. Well, you'd have to make that very important to your people. So you'd have to use that value to promise them better working conditions. You'd have to say something like this to your people. Of course, you'd also have to prove it, but you'd have to say something like this as a first announcement. Let me tell you what life is going to start looking like on this team. Number one, you will never again put your job and your family into conflict without giving me the chance to do something about it. Your job and your family will be strangers no more. You're doing good, important work here. As we celebrate that for you, we're going to roll that celebration right out to your family, the people that make it possible for you to get in here every day and do that good work. And when something great is going on for you at home, don't you dare think you have to leave it locked up at home. You roll it in here. We'll cheer you on. But God forbid something serious ever goes wrong for you at home. I want you to know you'll have the strength and the support of this family. Because we're like family here too. We're here together all the time. It's time we started acting like a family. I mean the very best families. This team will have open, honest communication. This team will have unconditional support. When we need it, this team will have tough love. But under pressure, this team will never turn on this team. No, this team will come together to protect this team. Because that's what families do. And family is very important to me. Now, do you think your people are going to reject a message like this from you? Oh my God. Your people are dying for a message like this from you. They're dying for what leadership really represents, which is righteous cause and trust at the highest levels. And all that Maslow stuff that you probably dozed off about during management school. Significance, belonging, and self-worth, core emotional fulfillment. If your people have not bought something like this from you, that just means you're not selling it. They're dying for this from you. And leadership is very hard to find in the world today. If they can touch it any place, particularly the place that they live in half their waking hours, they're going to respond to it. And this brings up the difference between management and leadership that I promised you. Here is the basic short-form difference between management and leadership. Any management message that you ever hear, no matter how expensively and eloquently delivered to you it is, whether it comes to you on the small screen in your hand, whether it comes to you on the big screen at a Google offsite, whether there's free clothing involved, whether Google got the Village people to play together again, I thought all those guys were dead, whatever it is, any management message that you ever hear is simply an equation that ends only one way. Equals work harder. That's a management message. But any leadership message that you ever hear Any real, authentic leadership message is also an equation that ends only one way. Equals live better. Now, I can tell you what, if you're a manager, your people are not going to work harder unless they are convinced it is going to allow them to live better. Of course, the same goes for you. That's what we're talking about here. So will Google reject this? Well, Google is we put Bury My Heart at Conference Room B into some of the organizations in Google, and it got rave reviews. They didn't reject it at all. Struggled with it a bit, but didn't reject it. Will Google, the company, reject this? No. Here's from a company perspective, I can tell you as an ex-CEO, I didn't realize this at the time, but from a company perspective, when you're looking at a manager culture, the biggest issue for a company when it comes to its managers is protecting against the constant dilution of energy from its managers. Because if you're a manager, you only have so much energy. And most of that energy is already tapped. So, first of all, just doing the job. That dial is cranked to 10 all the time. We always say that managers eat from a magic plate. It doesn't matter how much you swallow, nothing ever seems to disappear. And so that dial is, all your energy is being used just to do the job. But doing the job is not the entire job for a manager. You also have to constantly incorporate the new and the more in that job. And the first dial is not going to turn down for the second dial. If you have any shreds of energy left, you're going to spend it staying sane on the job while you're trying to do the first two things. And so managers are just tapped out. And yet the company still wants you to do more and bigger and harder stuff. Where is that energy going to come from if those dials never turn down? Managers are going to go to fumes. That's all they got left. And if a manager goes to fumes, that kind of energy, you may seem like a manic multitasking PDA checking change agent, but that energy, that's nasty energy. That energy is killing you. At the same time, it's juicing you. It's not the kind of energy that is the same as sustained emotional commitment. That energy is toxic energy, it's neurobiologically toxic energy, and ultimately becomes cynical energy, exhausted energy. There isn't a strategy or goal that Google can conceive and drop onto a platform of that kind of manager energy that will ever be dependably weight-bearing. So the question is how do you give managers more energy and take the weight off the enterprise while you're doing it? Because nobody's got any more time to figure this out. You have to shift the energy source to an individual energy source, a self-sustaining, self-reinforcing energy source. That's what Bury My Heart at Conference Room B is all about, by the way. If you can turn your job into a mechanism for fulfilling your deepest personal values, you will protect that mechanism by making the company even more successful than it is right now. Because now, in addition to everything else Google does for you, it's doing something even more important. Whether it realizes it or not, it would be giving you the opportunity to understand how to do this. You cannot live your values without the support of your people. If your people don't know what those values are and don't care, you don't have a shot at this. So if you turn your values into better working conditions for your people are going to protect you. Now as a manager, you stop being a replaceable commodity. They don't want anything to happen to you now. So how are they going to keep you safe? Give us the performance objectives. We've got that. You stay right where you are. That's why companies who don't have patience as a corporate value love Bury My Heart at Conference Room B. And it's this energy that is the biggest issue for managers. So let me wrap up this brief overview. Is that redundant? Brief overview. Well, let me wrap up this overview by reframing this first question. I already asked this question on your behalf. Is leadership important? And I answered it for you based on 20 plus years of in-depth work on this subject. No, it is not important. That's not exactly the right answer. The right answer is, yes, it is important. It is very important. Why is leadership important? Because leadership is the organizing framework for emotional commitment. And that's critical. Emotional commitment will do a lot of things for you if you have to manage people. If you have to get results through other people, this is the best way to do it. People will follow you as a leader. They will not follow you as a manager. Nobody is going to line up behind you as a manager except maybe to push you down the stairs. But as a leader, they are going to follow you, and they're going to listen to you, and they're going to have faith in you, and they're going to grow with you. Those are leadership things. But there is one other benefit to doing this that trumps all those things. So I have a brief interactive portion here for you. I'll ask it of all of you. Managers can certainly answer. I don't know where to start the voting, so I'm going to just start it very low. I don't mean to be patronizing to you when I ask you this question. Somebody pulled that on me last week, by the way. They said, I don't mean to be patronizing to you. That means when I'm talking down to you. I said, I know what patronizing means. Shit. Yeah. So I don't mean to be patronizing to you, which means when I'm talking down to you, okay? But we got to start the voting somewhere. So let me just ask, how many of you in this room work 40 or more hours a week? Raise your hands. Okay. I ask this question because I put this argument that I just put in front of you, in front of managers all over the world all the time. And I've had managers all the time say to me, you're talking about my personal values? Well, of course I live my personal values. In my personal life, I protect and promote my personal values. But I'm also a manager. So yes, in my personal life, I protect and promote my personal values. And then every morning when they clamp the helmet down on that hazmat suit that says manager across the back and I go into the office, I'm all over the company values. That's beautiful. That is very inspiring, but there is one dangerous flaw in this common management logic. So most of you work 40 or more hours a week here. How about anybody here working 45 or more hours a week? Raise your hands. I'm not going to bite you. That should go likewise, okay? I don't want to be bitten for this, all right? This is just the way it is. All right, how many of you work 50 hours a week or more if you netted it out week in, week out? Raise your hands. Okay. Anybody pulling 55 hours a week or more? Isn't okay. Anybody doing 60 hours a week or more? Okay. So what, can we say on average it's 50 hours a week in, week out, or is it less? Tell me. Let me explain what I mean by interactive, okay? Listen, I'm not going to hurt you with this. You're already hurting yourself. That would be kind of the point. So 50 hours a week? I'm just going to, okay, good. It's like special homeroom here. Okay, good. So 50 hours a week or more. How about travel time? The time you spend getting back and forth to work or traveling for work. I assume you're not all days feral road warriors, but is that at least another 10 hours a week you spend traveling? Okay, now, thank you. Now we are at 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week. You're working 50, you're traveling 10. How about think time? The time you're not actually on the job, but you're thinking about the job. How many hours a week is that? That's just the rest of the time, right? Think about this. How many hours a week do you think you spend not actually engaged in doing the job, but thinking about the job, worrying about the job, obsessing about the job, talking to somebody outside the job about the job, waking up screaming about the job? Could that be in a 7-day span, another 15 hours a week? Easy, right? Now we're at 75 hours a week. You're working 50, you're traveling 10, you're thinking about work 15. Well, I'm going to skip the entire mathematical formula for you. I'm just going to give you the bottom line. At a combined 75 hours a week between work time, travel time, and think time, each and every manager in this room, and anybody else who answered that way, is spending on average more than double your waking hours working than not working. Welcome to your personal life. You think you get these hours back when death sends you an email? I know you're Google manager. You think, I would just delete that email from death without reading it and I will live forever. It does not work that way. This is it. This is it. These are the irretrievable hours of your personal life. And no matter how fulfilling and rewarding, financially, intellectually, this job may be, to not live your deepest personal values over half your waking hours is a crime. What's worse, it's an unnecessary crime. Google is not deliberately saying to you, do not meet your personal values at work. I mean, unless one of your personal values is like corporate embezzlement or something. There's plenty of room for both. Yes, you have a job, a responsibility as a manager, and that is to protect and promote Google's values and Google's vision for the world. Side by side with that responsibility, you have an opportunity, which is to protect and promote your own values and your own vision. And if you do that right, jumping on that opportunity will never hurt your responsibility. In fact, it will make most of your responsibility happen for you. So, why should you become a leader? Because leadership, if you deconstruct leadership, it's all about emotional commitment. If you deconstruct emotional commitment, it's all about living your deepest personal values. Why should you live your deepest personal values? Well, your deepest personal values are your very own definition of what life looks like when you live it exactly the way you want to. Your values are your very own source of safety, of hope, of renewal. Well, why should you live your deepest personal values at work? This is an excellent question to ask. If your attorneys are planning an insanity defense, because you're spending over half your waking hours here, because you don't get this time back, because this is a corporate organism you're working in, it's got its own life force and its own priorities. To make living your deepest personal values a passive process in an environment that's not a benign environment is a very dangerous thing to do. Because your values will ultimately result in your leadership, and your humanity cannot be self-proclaimed. It is only activated when you offer it to others. Because if you don't know what's true for you, everyone else has unusual influence. If you're not on your own agenda, you're prey to everybody else's. Because those 10,000 managers who said family and integrity are very important to me, family and integrity are the things that I compromise to be successful. They weren't saying family is being compromised because I don't have work-life balance. They were saying family is being compromised because the dependable support and affection and community I get from my family, I'm like getting in a place I'm spending over half my waking hours. They didn't say integrity is being compromised because I'm being forced to lie, cheat, and steal to make my numbers. They said my integrity is being compromised because there is a disturbingly low amount of integrity between who I really am and who I am at work. Now, I don't want to stand up here acting all emotionally evolved in front of you. That's actually a violation of my parole. The whole thing is taken completely out of context. But I can tell you this. I will tell you this. This is your one and only precious life. Now, somebody is going to decide how it's going to be lived. And that person had better be you. So, is leadership important? Yes. Leadership is actually the most important thing you will ever do. And let me just wrap this up, and then I'm happy to take any questions from you. I want to wrap this up. I was wondering how I should end this. I'm going to end it by answering a question I'm asked all the time. I am regularly asked this question from the C-suite or from individual managers or employees, but mostly from managers. The question is, if you had just one recommendation you could give to any manager in any company, in any position, anywhere in the world, you could only tell them one thing. What is the one most urgent recommendation you would give to any manager? And I love it when people turn my life's work into a game show question, but I've had a chance to think about it. I'm going to leave you with this today. For yourself, because it's your life that's at stake here. This time, the time you're spending on the job, you don't get this time back. Your life is happening to you right now. For your family, because the health of your family outside the job depends in large part on the health of your family inside the job. If you're a manager, for your people, because it's not easy working in environments of constant uncertainty and pressure, with regular reminders of how little control you have over your work life, for someone who you only know as my manager. For your customers, because people don't trust companies. They trust people. for the company itself, because Google is not a technology company. Don't ever make that mistake. Google is a human company selling technology to other humans. And the pivot point upon which any strategic success rests is a discretionary effort of its human organization. And you can't sell it outside if you can't sell it inside. And finally, for the world, because let's face it, things are very weird out there right now. I'm just talking economically. The world is a scary, uncertain, shaken place. And we actually have every indication that things are going to get a whole lot weirder before they get any better. Now, what is it that any of the good people gathered here together today in this room can possibly do about the conditions that affect the world at large? Not much. Except to extend our own humanity to the people that we are closest to, including the people that we see every day, including our employees and our customers. And so for all of those reasons, I urge you to be human first and a manager second. Okay, thank you. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I have a question. So when you talk about like managers being leaders, the situation is sad that you think your manager is not a true leader. Should you look for a leader or try to influence your manager?
So if your manager is very clearly not a leader, you want to get up here on film with me? And then, an anonymous question from, it could be anybody in this whole section, saying, my manager is not a leader, what do I do? Do I go looking for a leader? Or do I stay and take my stand right here? I would say it's a version of the same question that managers ask about, if I can't live my values here, do I leave? I would give you the same advice. Now, I wouldn't leave for a couple reasons. First of all, no manager may be any different for you, and this may ultimately be the best manager you've ever worked with. The bigger issue and the bigger solution is to help your manager learn how to be a leader. And I gotta tell you, it's just not something that you really learn being a manager. The biggest challenge, if you're a manager, is to unlearn the job of being a manager, because there's so much stupidity in there. One of the things that managers learn very early on, not working at Google necessarily, but if they've ever managed anywhere, you learn as a manager either directly from somebody else or it just seeps into your DNA. You learn that you need to manage. The reason your job exists and the reason you need to control and watch people is that you fundamentally cannot trust the employee culture to protect the company with its own good judgment. So you have to manage them. And that's just ridiculous. But you learn that sort of thing. And I will tell you as well that from your position, you think about clawing your way to the top at Google, you can cling to the illusion that everything will be figured out and fulfilling when you get there. I gotta tell you, I know a lot of those people in a lot of companies. When you get there and find that things still don't make sense, and now you can maybe a culture of one and you can't admit what doesn't feel good because you got all the apparent rewards of the job and there's no place else to go. People jump from the top floors in buildings, not the bottom. Have you noticed that? So I would say it would be a kindness for you to tell your manager, listen, I'm gonna make a deal with you on the business. You wanna get the best out of me, I'm willing to give it to you. Here's the way to do it. If for no other reason, if not just for understanding what this team is truly capable of in terms of commitment and loyalty, because you may have the wrong idea about that, I can tell you how to get the best at me. And I would make it a values conversation. This is not soft stuff. This is the stuff of hardcore results. Your manager's got values too, may have the same values you do. I'd put it in terms of that, to say, listen, the way I'm being managed, like I have family and integrity as a value, and here's what I mean by that. This isn't working for me. Like on a human level, this is not working for me. Tell me your values and I'll respect those. I gotta have that back. I would say you have a better chance of actually fixing and helping that person professionally and personally than if you just take off. Okay? Any other questions? Yes?
What are some recommendations you have for spending time dedicated to
I personally spend no time dedicated to self-awareness. I wrote the book, that's enough. I believe think deep, live shallow. That's my personal model for living. I think self-awareness is a beautiful thing. Like I said, there's so many influences on you. Anybody trying to sell you anything stands to profit from you not having a strong sense of self. Because again, if you don't know what's true for you, I've got unusual influence. So I would make it a habit to stay self-aware just as a corrective measure to all the influences in the world. How do you do that? The best way to do it is to surround yourself with people who know what you're trying to do and take some value out of that. That's why in the book, it's definitely a process for managers, but there's also a process how to adapt it, how to take it home, how to do it with your partner, if you have kids, how to take this with your kids, your community, however you do this. So I think there's tremendous value in self-awareness, although the people who study it the most avidly are the most dim, least aware people I've ever met, but that's just coincidence. I think if you stay self-aware by surrounding yourself with people who understand that you're trying to do that, and you're holding yourself to that standard, and they find value out of that, that's the best way. And I would advise anybody to pick a couple of methods that work the best for them and to live a life of intention. This is no time in the world to not live a life of intention. Yeah. Congratulations, by the way. Oh, yeah, I know you. Yeah.
So you said there are some organizations that have gone through your program here at Google, and you said they didn't reject it, but they struggled with it. So I'm curious to know, were those cultural things, or were they things that you see in other organizations?
That's a good question. Why did they struggle with it? Some of it was cultural. Some of it was having to make the case that the opposite of emotional is not rational. The opposite of emotional is detached. So don't think about it. The emotion in the human brain is a highly rational process. It's just capable of producing wonderfully irrational responses. So a lot of it was, what is this? Is this some soft woo-woo stuff, which it clearly was not. So some of it was just the bias of Google, the renowned bias of Google, to lean on the intellectual. And once they understood there was an actual schematic to this and pretty well documented and proven, they relaxed. Part of it was just what happens to a manager. It's just a weird, are you a manager? Okay, well, I hope I haven't talked you out of it here. There's just weird stuff that happens to managers, even in the best companies. Like the thing I was talking about earlier. But I can tell you that the most difficult, and this is my answer to your question, the most difficult part of writing the book was the duality of the reader as a manager. There's just something that happens to managers. If this was a room full of managers, I could take any two of you out and talk to you about how you want to live and work and live at work. And you'd be pretty sane and sensible about that, as managers are. If I bring you back and put you in a room full of other managers, some bizarre herd mentality takes over and you start legislating against yourself. Because the conditions that managers deplore most about managing, there's no evil brain in a jar behind the curtain. They were created and mandated and accepted by managers, acting as management, the honor guard of the corporate organism. And what managers learn is that if I set you free to pursue your own values, your own priorities, maybe you won't prioritize the company. I mean, what if you have creativity as a value and you work for me? And I say, okay, and this is what we have to do. You go, yeah, I love that. It's a values thing. I ain't doing it, okay? I have freedom and creativity as a value. I have health as a value. I'm not working like this. I have integrity as a value. I'm not representing this product until it is fully tricked out. And so managers learn to just stop this in themselves and stop it in others. That's management worldwide. So basically, to answer your question, there was some fighting against the initial bias against something that seemed soft and stupid. When they realized it was not soft and stupid, the next question was, gee, can I really sell this to myself? If I've detached, I did that because I think it's safe to be detached from my relationship with the company and with people. You're asking me to be unsafe. I got to think about that. Can I sell this to my people? Can I still be a manager and get done what I have to get done? We work through all of that stuff. I don't think there's any real barrier at Google that will prevent this at all because they really bought into it. But there is a barrier from being a manager that is the same the world over. That takes a while. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, and then my next
Yeah.
question would be for those of us who might not be managers but work a lot with managers across the company, the selling, the putting yourself in a place that's potentially unsafe feeling for you being actually beneficial.
Yes, yes. I know. I mean, that's what that, like I said, that's where the, what's that?
So I think that the second part of the question is then, once you've identified that part of the resistance is that we're essentially asking people to put themselves in a place that's potentially emotionally unsafe. And once they recognize that, then how do we convince them, or do we try to convince them, right, that that actually is beneficial both for them and for the work that they're trying to get done?
Yeah, that's a challenge. It's going to take both, and that's why the book is written from both. Every manager has a manager. I mean, even, you know who Mother Teresa's boss was? Who really her boss, the person who did her performance appraisals, was the Pope. Okay, you think you got problems? Your boss just thinks they're the Pope. Her boss was really the Pope, and so she had a manager. Everybody's got managers. And this is not going to work with the manager not able to make it a value and a safe proposition for you, and you not able to help the manager feel that way too. That's what the book is about. It's the right question. It can be done. We've used it all over the world. It can be done. Here, it can be done at Google. Okay. Thank you.